And welcome back to What If. Today's one-shot What If is from Mr. Immortal, who asked the question, what if Alex Mercer from Prototype was in the Star Wars universe? Given everything that exists within the Star Wars lore, a being like Alex Mercer really isn't that far of a stretch. You could easily say he was an experiment by the Empire, or that, the New Republic was creating a super soldier serum, or that he was a prototype stormtrooper who went awry or something like that, or clone trooper, a mutated clone that, something went on and this is what happened. There's many different ways you could go about explaining Alec Mercer in the Star Wars universe. For my money, because he is kind of a government experiment with the blacklight virus to some degree, I think we will go with he is a, let's call it, failed experiment done by the Empire during, say, the actual Star Wars, between the beginning of the reign of the Empire, but well before the end of the original series. So probably something akin to like 10 years prior to the original series. And he gets out, he kind of wreaks havoc a little bit. Now, unfortunately, as messed up as his abilities really are to just absorb biomass, and if he just touches you, he could just kill you at will if he wanted to, he still really wouldn't be any match for someone like Vader or the Emperor. Knowing what his abilities are, knowing what he can do, because Vader and the Emperor would probably have vast amount of knowledge about that. They can easily just keep him at bay, throw with the Force, just telekinesis him right out the window, and just throw him into space. So in theory, honestly, if he doesn't get away from those guys, they will just wreck his shit. And then Vader can just cauterize him with his lightsaber, because that is literally just concentrated plasma and a beam. And even though he can survive a nuke, you just put that to him long enough, he's not going to be able to recover from that after a while. Even though he can still just absorb biomass, he's still got to be able to touch someone. And Vader's an even bigger problem for him, because Vader's, as Obi-Wan so eloquently put it, more machine now than man, twisted and evil. Because he's actually got so much tech, Vader actually can just grab him and not be threatened immediately by his ability to absorb biomass. Now, if he's touching Vader in terms of like his actual body, what's left, the upper parts of his arms and legs, his chest, or his head, well, then Vader's in trouble. But Vader also wears a suit that can protect him from at least the biomass absorbing qualities of Mercer. And Mercer is aware of these things. Like he is like a prototype experiment, a prototype that just went awry, and now he's on the run. And yeah, trust me, there's enough stuff in Star Wars, unlike in the prototype games, to waste Alex Mercer's ass. He survived a bomb dropping. I think it still like taxed him a bit, and he was like needed to heal, but he survived a bomb dropping on him. But for all intent and purposes, despite all the stuff that is going on in the prototype game, with all like the mutations and things along those lines, it is still basically set in our world, in our time and society, with the weapons and stuff we have. Just a little bit of extra, let's call it not supernatural, but super science thrown in there. Whereas Star Wars, even though it's a long time ago and it's obviously far, far away, you can blow up a planet with very minimal effort, honestly, in the Star Wars universe. There's plenty of weapons that are kind of well beyond nukes. So yeah, even a lightsaber, which destructive capability wise isn't beyond a nuke by any stretch of the means, is still something that Mercer would not want to be tangling with, because he can't just grab plasma, and the Emperor can just shoot him with lightning. Even though I think he can resist that to some degree. So Mercer would just be on the run for for a good long while. And I don't think Alec Mercer will really come into the fray again, honestly, until the fall of the Empire, when he's not really being hunted. He's probably been living on his own, probably just feeding off like animals and wildlife. And, just surviving that way. Because, to be honest, even though he's like the anti-hero protagonist of the series, he's not actually a villain. He's not just going to go around just killing people for the sake of it. He's honestly probably happy just living a life on his own, and maybe helping out people every now and then. So he wouldn't probably show up until actually, say, like Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett era. My best guess is he actually shows up around Book of Boba Fett. And we obviously don't know how Book of Boba Fett ends yet. We still got 3 episodes left. But given how it is, I bet he may be like the kind of one of the muscle that gets brought in to help with like the Pike Syndicate and things along those lines, or possibly even Crimson Dawnts, and implied they might be out behind it. And he would still survive into the next movies. But again, the issue for Alec Mercer at this point is now that the Empire's fallen, you got the First Order, who probably still know of him, but don't have like any standing order to bring him in. He probably just goes around doing his own thing. He's not force sensitive, because that's not what they were looking for, I think, in terms of this type of prototype, if you will. But he's not force sensitive. He's not a Jedi. He's not doesn't have like lightsabers or anything inside of him. He doesn't have blasters or create energy shields. He's just a vicious melee weapon of destruction and death. But I don't really see him playing a real substantial role in any of the series. Um, I mean, I see him because I think he just kind of stays on his own. The only time he could play a substantial part in the series is maybe near the Rise of Skywalker, where at the end everyone comes in their ships to fight the Emperor one last time. Sure, maybe he could show up then, but again, he's a melee fighter, better suited towards that than actually like a star pilot. Even though he clearly would know how to fly a ship because this is the world he lives in, to be frank. So really, the biggest part of his story within Star Wars would be his conception as a character, as a soldier, and then his escape from the Empire and everything, all the trouble he caused for them upon his escape. And I do fully imagine that yeah, that could be like a really cool story. Him escaping out of his confines, taking out these stormtroopers, getting blasted, shot at, but then takes one of the stormtroopers he's killed, absorbs the biomass, heals, and then just comes back and melees them. And he's about to get to the hangar when Vader's there, and they square off. And he initially comes in, and Vader is able to avoid and just almost avoid, gets scratched on his armor, slices him with a lightsaber, that cauterizes him. He's healing slow, and he just comes in again. Vader just stops and just starts throwing him back and forth, back and forth. He grabs some stormtroopers to heal and throws them at Vader, who just slices them in half. Ultimately, it ends with him getting away, most likely, but either him being jettisoned out of airlock into space towards a planet, and because he's pretty much now just something different than human, he could easily probably survive in the vacuum of space. Uh, so that, or he is able to actually get in the ship and is able to escape. So yeah, I don't actually see Alec Mercer, unlike what happens in the Marvel universe, where it's a lot more of a contained story. Because Star Wars is so expansive, that really hurts the impact of Alec Mercer in the actual Alec. I keep saying Alec, if it's Alex Mercer in the overall story. That's the issue I have with this versus say like the Marvel or DC one, is that Marvel is mostly terrestrial and earthbound. So it contains the story. It means a lot more of these stories that happen. He could find his way towards. Whereas with Star Wars, it's so expansive and large that if he just decides to camp out on a planet for the rest of his life, out of the way of anyone, he can do that and be fine. So for me, that's the general implication of what Alex Mercer would in the Star Wars series. His conception is actually very easy to figure out based on like how Star Wars works. But in terms of his impact on the overall story itself, it really wouldn't be that intense or impactful, really. I think he would just be another character that exists within the Star Wars lore. And you know what? That's okay sometimes. But anyway, that is just my thoughts. What would you have done differently if you had decided to do a what if Alex Mercer was in the Star Wars universe? This is my version of it, obviously. That's fine if you don't agree with it, and not everyone will. But what would your version of it look like? Let me know. Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one. Have a good one, folks.